Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. I'm Christine, she, her, and I'm happy to be your educator today. Like Laura said, I do work for Primary Care Alberta in a public health department called Sexual and Reproductive Health Education Services, and I am located in Calgary. One of the topics we teach often about is supporting healthy development, especially through puberty. And so today's session is about supporting healthy teen development related to risk taking. Teens are faced with making decisions about risks every day as they're going through this part of growing up. So, today we're going to talk about risks and why they matter and ways we can support healthy risk taking so our teens can become healthy adults. The information I'm sharing with you today is from a Western medicine public health perspective. It's going to be up to date, grounded in evidence, and with the goal of supporting individuals and families and communities be well. You might have additional places to get quality information about all sorts of health topics based on the teachings of your family and of your community. Every culture has their own understanding of what it means to grow from a child to an adult and the role of supportive adults when it comes to teen risk taking. So, even though we're not in the same physical space today, having a set of group agreements or group norms helps start us off to learn together in a good way. Our team practices from a foundation of respect, respect for diversity and inclusion, and recognizing we all have different beliefs and values. So please today take the information that I'm sharing in the spirit that it's intended. I'm not here to tell you what's right or wrong for you as a parent or a professional or a supportive adult. I'm here to share some information about how we can all work together to support healthy teen development and healthy teen risk taking. We also come from the perspective of respecting the right to join in and pass, and to respect each other by being present and by listening. Your participation is up to you, but we all learn better when we are attentive to the task at hand and then we're open to learning. We'll respect the right to privacy, which means we're going to turn off the recording when it comes to the question and answer portion of today's session. But what I say is not private. It will be posted publicly, and please share the information I'm sharing with you today with anyone that's willing to listen, especially the teens that you may be supporting. And any question is okay. We'll have that opportunity at the end of the session. But another reason why I've included this particular slide, even though this is a virtual session and we're not learning together in person, is this is one practical tool you can use to guide your conversations with the teens in your lives. It's especially useful when the topic is sensitive, like related to risks teens might think about taking, like substance use or sexuality, or if it's emotionally charged, like a conversation about a teen has made a mistake again, or the teen has taken a risk that could be dangerous and you're worried. So if those things are going on, and following a structured safety approach, like having group agreements when you're entering that conversation, it makes that conversation safer. And it means we have more influence on the teens as we're supporting them, their development, because it keeps them in relationship with us. So in this session, this is what they're paying me for today, we're aiming not only to build your knowledge about teen risk taking, but also to support you in your role as a parent or a professional or another supportive adult, so that you can talk with teens and help them engage in healthy risk-taking behaviors so that they can grow up in healthy ways. We're going to do that by identifying how risk fits into healthy teen brain development. We're going to talk about tips for talking about risks so that teens feel heard and included when boundaries are being set and opportunities for taking safer risks are being provided. And we're going to learn a little bit about how to teach teens to take safer risks and handle things when things go wrong. So I'm going to ask, Laura's going to launch a poll. And while Laura's doing that, I'm going to talk you through it. But you should have a pop-up on your screen shortly. And it's going to ask you, did you ever do something risky when you were a teen? So if you could fill that in, and then Laura, when you think everyone's had a chance to click one of those choices, yes, they've done something risky when they were a teen, maybe once or twice, no, or I'm not telling. Once you've done that, I'd love to see where everybody landed if you could share those results. What do you think, folks? Okay, so did you do risk taking when you were a teen? Yes, over 3/4 of us. Another 17% said, well, once or twice. And 7%, a couple of folks have said never. No one wasn't willing to tell. But let's face it, for us to have become adults, 100% of us did risky things because even just leaving home, creating a family, going to school, learning to drive, creating new relationships, all of those are risky. They're all risk-taking behaviors. But you're right. This isn't usually what we're thinking about when we think of teen risk taking. But it is time, 2026, to reframe a negative outlook on risk taking. We're going to do that a little bit here. So, what exactly are we talking about? Risk taking is when someone does something that exposes them to danger or possible danger while they're attempting to get a benefit. And as people navigate whatever that thing is, there's the opportunity for them to experience some sort of growth. For example, asking someone out on a date exposes someone to the danger of possible rejection, but it also has the possible benefit of a fun new relationship. Or learning how to skate or swim exposes someone to falling or feeling bad for not being good at it right away, and has the possible benefit of fitness, fun, social connections. So risk taking on its own is neutral. The types of risks sometimes people take is where we see the adults in teens' lives getting a bit concerned. But risk taking is needed. We often see risk taking in teens as a negative force, careening them towards certain life changing doom. But in reality, risk taking, it is a force. It does send teens careening, but actually they're careening towards certain life changing growth and development. That's how it's supposed to work. We need to take risks to grow and develop at every life stage. Decision making is risk taking. To do something or not takes risks. It also takes risks to learn how to manage them, dealing with the outcomes positive, negative, or neutral. We need to take risks to be brave and show courage, to do new things, to develop the ability to accept rejection, to handle mistakes. Independence requires risk taking. To develop in healthy ways requires people to take the risk to try new things. And who is at the age where they're learning decision making, bravery, building skills and knowledge, learning how to deal with rejection and deal with mistakes and failure? Whose job is it to become independent? Whose job is it to develop? It's teens. That's why teens take risks, both healthy risks and some less healthy risks. So let's take a moment and
for parents.
I'm Sometimes I think when I'm showing a video that I've shown everything in like 2.5 minutes and it makes everything else I'm going to say just bonus information. So I've tried to not repeat everything you're going to see in the few videos that we have throughout this. But I will encourage you, when you get the recording of this later on, it will show where you can find links to those videos. And those videos may also be an opportunity for you to teach the teens in your life kind of about where risk taking comes from, why it's important, and to open up those conversations with them about what they need from you to take healthy risks and grow up in healthy ways. So, even though we all do need to take risks to keep growing and building our lives, teens definitely take more risks. And what teens think of, what they think counts as a risk is quite different than what an adult might feel as risky behavior. So it leaves them more vulnerable to taking both healthy and unhealthy risks. So why are teens so in such a risk-taking behavior space? Well, they're wired. They're wired for their brain to develop in a certain way so that they can complete the developmental tasks they need to complete to become adults. So, what do I mean here? Well, part of this is about our development as a species. We have some ancient hardwiring in our brains and bodies that for success as a species of humans, our ancestors needed teens to be hardwired for risk taking. Across the globe, at various stages of human history, our ancestors lived in small family groups that were often far away from other groups of people. And we needed to travel to new lands we didn't know about for safety, for food and shelter when the environment or social situations changed, to reproduce, to build community. Hunting, gathering, new agricultural technologies, all of those things had danger. And not all of the groups we might come across on our travels would have been safe for us. Now, many of those things needed for human survival couldn't be done easily by children, elders, or people with really young children. So many of those risk-taking tasks fell to teens or fell to people in adolescence. So all of this put together means that teens would have needed to take risks to leave their small family group, to join another small family group in order to reproduce, to go to hunt, to go to battle, to deal with threats that came into the community, to scout for new lands for the group to travel to as needed, and to come up with some of the new technologies. Teens today can look over a sea of teens who took big risks throughout history. King Tut led war, changed Egypt's religious beliefs during his reign, aged 10 to 19. Alexander the Great was barely 20 when he became king back in 336. Joan of Arc was 14 in 1429 when she led a French army. Mary Shelley wrote and published Frankenstein in the 1800s. And more recently, we've got Malala Yousafzai, who won a Peace Prize at age 17 for courage and risk-taking behavior to support girls' education. So we are hardwired for this. Teen brains develop to support this needed risk-taking. When they're in puberty, they go through physical, emotional, social changes that take them from a child to being an adult. And this includes brain development, which continues through the early 20s, long after the physical changes of puberty are done. Now, teen brain develops back or bottom to the top or front. The back of the brain supports pleasure seeking, immediate gratification. This can lead to feelings of immortality, decisions that are based on those feelings. It's a more urgent acting part of the brain. Now, the front of the brain supports judgment, rational second thought, being able to think ahead about consequences and make decisions based on that. Now, it's not that teens don't have any function in that part of the brain, no matter what it might seem like sometimes. It's just that this combination of back to front development means that they may or may not recognize the risk for what it is. And even if they do, they often aren't able to pause and consider the consequences without some additional support. Risk taking is inevitable. All of this all of this wiring and brain development helps make sure that teens can go through the developmental tasks they must go through to become healthy, self-actualized adults with as much independence as they're able to have. A teen has the developmental task to become independent adults. This means figuring out who they are, how to live, build skills, knowledge, values. Developing a secure, positive sense of self is one of the most difficult developmental tasks we have as people, and it's the one that they're going through in adolescence. So, to do this, everyone needs to take the risk to do new things. Now, teens need to take risks, and from us, what they need supportive, safe environments from which to take those risks from. They need help making decisions. They need help making mistakes and handling things when they don't go as planned. This often isn't easy for teens or for the adults who care about them, who care for them. Their need for independence and risk taking, combined with their need for support and care, creates an uncomfortable but expected paradox. Teens' job to complete the developmental tasks, the ones that you see on the screen. Our job as parents, professionals, and supportive adults is to help them do it in healthy ways while managing our own adult emotions and frustrations and sometimes sadness in adult ways. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. But sometimes I always hear, okay, well, I get the ancient wiring, developmental tasks, brain development, but what about peer pressure? Isn't that what makes teens take risks? Um, we've often heard about peer pressure. So, as with risk taking, the teen brain is hardwired to want to fit in. They are hardwired in the teen years to have a need to belong. After all, fitting in to a new group after leaving their small family group is necessary for safety and survival, both in ancient times and today. Um, when teens are in that space in between leaving the family home, but before forming a new family unit of their own, this hard wiring kind of pushes them into forming new groups of similarly aged peers to fill that support and care gap. This wiring means that to try and fit in when similarly aged peers are around, teens are more likely to take risks, even if their peers haven't asked them to. For example, so for us to help them, one of the things we can do is help them understand this brain development and wiring so they can figure out ways to navigate that intense desire to fit in and engage in risk taking, hoping to fit in. Just knowing what's happening in their brain and body is often enough to help them start shifting towards dangerous risk taking to healthier risk taking. Now, the word peer pressure is quite interesting because when we talk about with teens, very often the pressure they're feeling is self-induced based on what they think their peers are doing. Now, sometimes it is based on a pressure they feel from people they imagine to be peers online. A lot of teens are influenced by influencers or celebrities that they feel they have a relationship with, but it's really one way. These are called parasocial relationships, where somebody feels they have a relationship with somebody online who doesn't really know that that person exists. So sometimes teens feel pressure to go along with what an influencer is saying, even though that influencer has little idea that teen exists. We can also support teens navigate this part by helping them develop in-person, real-life friendships. Friends have influence on teens, And often friends are who can influence positive risk taking and positive healthy behaviors. Developing friendships is an important part of adolescence. And yet, we know more and more teens are saying they're feeling lonely and isolated and that they have no real friends. What's more, teens are watching adult friendships around them, both in real life and in all sorts of parts of the media. So they're feeling pressure from all of these sources about what they probably should be doing. And one of the best influences are those real life friendships. Another thing we can do is model healthy friendships. Um, do the teens that you are involved with get a chance to see you interact with friends and see how you negotiate activities, how you support each other, and when needed, how you decline offers or say no thank you. We want to show some balance to the false relationship they may be getting influenced from online or in the media. So, what other things are pressuring teens when it comes to risk taking behaviors? Well, it's often us. Um, Teens today often feel enormous pressure from school and parents and social media and coaches and future universities and future employers. They're feeling pressure to do it all and do it perfectly. And we can ask ourselves, is this helping? Sorry. Is this helping? Is it supporting healthy risk taking? Or is this pressure actually pressuring them to avoid risk taking altogether in hopes for perfection? Our expectations, school expectations, overscheduling, trying to do all of the things so everything goes exactly to plan with no mistakes, that leaves very little room for growth. And that's true for adults, and it's really true for teens. So for many youth, unsafe or dangerous risk taking or avoiding risk taking altogether is a response to this enormous pressure they're feeling as an attempt to break free or escape from these pressures. And part of what kind of goes along with this is we know that anxiety and anxious feelings both impact healthy teen risk taking. So we know many teens have diagnosed anxiety disorders, and many more teens have feelings of anxiety that they notice and they feel impact their lives. And that tracks. After all, they're overscheduled, aiming for perfection, dealing with those many pressures we just talked about. But teens are also getting those conflicting messages about grow up, you need to take over some of these responsibilities, act your age, you need to do chores and earning money. But they're also being told they're too young to do some of the things they want to. They're going through all of the challenges that puberty has always given all of us. They feel lonely while being connected all the time. They feel they need to maintain this certain image that they've created for themselves online, and to be able to maintain that in person is pretty difficult. They have 24/7 access to media. They're living in the same socio-political environment we are, but they have less ability to deal with those big feelings that goes along with living in 2026. And as adults, in the last 10, 20 years, a lot of us have really magnified the dangers out there, the dangers of risk, the dangers of mistakes, the dangers of failure. And yeah, we might have done it hoping we would scare them out of taking dangerous risks. But we know that fear-based messaging not only doesn't scare them out of doing things necessarily, it can scare them out of doing things they need to do. Fear-based messaging is harmful. All of this is very hard on teens. The resulting anxiousness or anxiety is impacting teen risk-taking, and in two conflicting ways. Fearing failure and mistakes and deeply feeling that perfection is the only way that they'll be accepted has resulted in anxious feelings that keeps teens from taking those healthy, developmentally appropriate risks they need to. And yet, at the same time, anxiety, research suggests, is resulting in some youth with anxiety to take even riskier behaviors, especially related to substance use and self-harm. So what's the goal here? When it comes to teens and teen risk-taking, what is our goal of supportive adults? Safety, control, obedience, perfect teens like you see here making perfect decisions? No. Let's put that aside, those expectations of this perfect teenagehood like that picture shows, and instead, let's simply aim for healthy teen development. So how do we do that? We support healthy risk-taking in teens, and that's what the rest of this session is going to be about. What can you do? What can we do together as supportive adults so teens build healthy risk-taking behaviors and grow up in healthy ways? And the key to this is finding a balance. The balance where a teen can take risks needed to develop in healthy ways, feel fulfilled, and enjoy adolescence without those risks causing serious emotional, social, spiritual, or physical harm to themselves or other people. It's finding that balance between no risk-taking and dangerous risk-taking, because both no risk-taking and dangerous risk-taking can have long-term serious consequences. Teens who are able to find that balance and take healthy risks are less likely to engage in dangerous risk-taking behavior at any time, and they're getting the benefit of risk-taking to their development. So to find this balance, probably one of the most important things that we can do as supportive adults is to help them develop positive self-esteem. Teens with positive self-esteem are more likely to take healthy risks, and that results in positive academic outcomes, social outcomes, physical outcomes, and positive mental health outcomes. Now, you'll see on this slide all of the things that we can do to support building teen self-esteem, and there are many resources you can access as a supportive adult to give you additional tips on how to do that. But I just want to give you the heads up here. Many of the things that we need to do as supportive adults to build positive self-esteem are related to how we interact with them. And some of those can be challenging for us to manage emotionally. Celebrating their development, modeling self-care, promoting their independence, praising their efforts and even the smallest bits of growth, showing trust. All of those are quite emotionally demanding tasks for us as adults at our developmental stage. And they can also touch on our own self-esteem and our own emotional responses. For example, you'll see on there, accept and celebrate that they're growing up and changing their identity. Well, as a parent, I know that can be hard for me to celebrate their growing up and changing identity, because as a parent, I might really miss the child they were. And this grief is common. We hear from it from all sorts of parents. Yes, it's nice for teens to know how much you miss them when being little, but it's even more important that they know that you accept and celebrate and love them now as they're going through these changes, and you will celebrate, accept, and love them as the adult they're becoming too. As parents of teens and as other supportive adults, we need to find ways to respond positively to who they are becoming while getting adult supports to handle any of our own sense of loss we might be feeling. Another example of where these youth self-esteem supporting strategies can be challenging for supportive adults is when it comes to modeling self-care and positive self-talk. Parents, caregivers, other supportive adults get so good at caregiving for others, especially for young people, that we sometimes forget to take care of ourselves. And as teens are moving into this part of their own development, we're moving into our next stage of our life development too. And so when we learn about building our own self-esteem, we practice our own self-care, we engage in positive self-talk, including all of those things in front of our teens. We're modeling what they're hoping they're going to do as well, which can result in higher teen self-esteem. Another thing we can do to promote healthy teen risk-taking is ensuring positive relationships with supportive adults. This may be the best way to both help youth build self-esteem and help them take healthy risks. I know it might not often seem like it. It is the teen adolescent task to work hard on building independence and an identity apart from their family, but they very much need supportive relationships with the adults who care about them, including parents, guardians, caregivers, grandparents, and the like. It's critical for their healthy development. It does mean that as adults, we accept that the relationship is changing, it's maturing, and with that teen, negotiate what that changing relationship is going to look like. You will work out while you're negotiating this maturing relationship how to best engage with your teen where they're at now. And as you do that, keep talking with them about important things, about less important things. All of that talk matters. Talk at the dinner table, throwing a ball. If every talk's a big talk about something stressful, we lose that benefit of talking and that relationship is strained. But don't forget, timing can be everything. Take advantage of what you think will work with your teen. Tips for talking are things like avoiding yes-no questions, avoiding critical body language, asking those open-ended questions. But you will learn what works best when you are talking about everyday things with the teen. In that same line of building strong relationships with supportive adults, well, you're probably here because that's who you are, a family member or a professional supporting families, parents, or youth. We all have a role to play when it comes to building safer family spaces. Teens who grow up in healthy ways, in supportive families, where they are exposed to affirming actions like you see on the left side of your screen, especially when it comes to their identities, they are able to take those healthy risks needed for development. Families who show supportive behaviors have teens who are healthier, happier, do better in school, at a lower risk of negative outcomes. This is true for all teens. It's especially true for teens who identify as 2S LGBTQI+. On the screen are some basic tips for building the healthy, safer family spaces that promote positive risk-taking and healthy teen development. Teens are more likely to engage in safer risk-taking when they have real life connections with peers and other supportive adults. We've kind of talked about that through, but now I'm really going to focus on in real life opportunities to build those friendships we talked about that can have such a positive influence on their behavior and risk-taking behavior especially. The real-time feedback of in real life connections and in real life connectedness helps guide teens to figure out what does and doesn't work, what does and doesn't fit with their values, what is and isn't okay. But to do this, we need to make sure that teens have free time where they can just be and be with peers and figure stuff out. Teens need free time to have fun. They need time to be bored. They need time to pursue their interests, even if those interests change day to day. That unscheduled social time with others is where some of our biggest learning and growing takes place. And don't worry, we are going to talk a little bit about setting limits in a few slides, so hang in there for those of you who are panicking at the idea of teens having a lot of free time. Um, of course, there requires some balance. There are many real life opportunities that we can hook our teens up with so they can connect with other people. And a lot of those in real life opportunities come with really significant time commitments or financial commitments. Um, let's take care in decision making about what additional commitments beyond school and family and taking care of things at home and having positive friendships. Let's take some care in deciding what additional things are we going to add into their schedule, because we do know that unscheduled, free, in real life connections matter to teen risk taking and positive teen risk taking. No teen has to do it all. Now, unfortunately, wrapped up in all of our care and hopes as adults, sometimes even when we're giving them the opportunities for real life connections, we still try to protect our teens from harm. And that makes sense. We know how much failure can hurt, and we know how serious the consequences of unhealthy risk taking can be. But in real life, we fail. And in real life, we make mistakes. And no matter what we say, no one can do anything they want and set their mind to. Everyone has limits. It's a fantasy to say you can do anything you want and set your mind to. It's unfair and it leads to false beliefs and stigma. And to learn what those limits are that anyone would have, people need the opportunity to try and make a mistake, to try and fail. Humans need to make mistakes and fail. It's how we learn. It's part of what makes us human. It's also how we develop important skills like knowing our limits, making apologies, being adaptable. Trying builds self-esteem, even when we don't succeed. And then the resiliency that can be built from learning how to handle mistakes and failure is one of the most important things we can give to our teens. Some adults take over teens' responsibilities to protect them from failing. But whether an adult has done the work for a teen to have success on a school project or navigate a challenging relationship, a teen knows as well as the adults who did the work for them that any success they've had isn't theirs. And there's not much harder on a teen's self-esteem and identity than to get rewards or praise for a success they didn't deserve, that they didn't do. A teen learns nothing from an A+ their parent got on an essay. For teens to be willing to engage in healthy risk-taking behavior, we need to let them try. We need to let them make mistakes. We need to let them fail. But that doesn't mean encouraging unsafe or unhealthy risks. It does mean we let them try, fail, and build from there. And we can teach teens how to handle mistakes. On this slide is one framework for how to teach teens how to handle or how to respond when they've made a mistake. First step, admit the mistake. The teen can acknowledge to themselves that they've made a mistake. They may need to also admit it to somebody else, depending on the nature of that mistake. They need to accept that people make mistakes. They're a human. They've made a mistake. Sometimes they will need to make an apology for the mistake. So learning and practicing the art of making a meaningful apology is an exceptionally useful skill for everyone, especially for teens. They may need to make amends. So the aim is to fix any harm or offer reparations for any harm if it's a bigger mistake. And then the fifth step, we can teach teens about how to respond when they make a mistake, is for them to learn to act. Figure out what to do next time and do that new thing so the mistake doesn't keep happening. But if teens are unwilling to take the risk of doing that new thing to prevent the mistake because they're scared they won't be perfect, we get caught in this trap of teens not being willing or able to make healthy risks or take healthy risks. Building the skills to handle mistakes and failure also builds the skill to be able to handle rejection. Rejection can feel like a form of failure. Teaching teens how to handle rejection is a critical life skill needed for academic, professional, and relationship worlds. It's required to support consent and positive relationships. While we've been talking lots about letting teens take risks, there are some points where, as adults, we need to set limits. Sometimes these limits are around the non-negotiables, like their safety or the law or family or school values. Sometimes the limits are simply a nope, this isn't okay here, like using hate speech or bullying. Sometimes it's a negotiable limit about screen time or curfews. When adults set limits with teens, not only is it meeting the teen's need to know what their limits are so they can work from and within it, it also models the strategies they can use when they're setting limits on themselves, which is a skill they need to develop as they become adults. Setting and talking about boundaries with teens normalizes growing up, curiosity, change while maintaining safety. It also models the skills to set limits themselves. But we have to remember teen development. It's their job as they move towards independence to push limits. Our job is to set them, to help teens respect them. And we can do that by effectively responding when they've pushed or broken a limit. So on the screen in front of you is one strategy supportive adults can use with teens when a limit has been set, a teen has pushed the limit or broken the limit. Now, as adults and parents, it's often easy to respond with frustration or anger by shutting them out or shutting them down. But more important to support healthy teen development and healthy teen risk taking, how we respond can actually move them towards setting and respecting limits themselves. So most important, stay calm. We also want to say what we're talking about specifically, like something like you're texting all the time at the dinner table and grandma's here for dinner. We want to normalize the behavior so the teen knows you know a little bit what their life is like. So something like, people often want to stay connected with their friends. It makes sense you want to text them a lot. And then remind them of the limit. So either set a limit, remind them of the limit. We can't text the whole time while we're eating and we're visiting grandma. And we give reasons for that limit. It keeps us from connecting. Grandma doesn't understand why you're on the phone all the time and is likely feeling ignored. As a family, we try and connect over eating, whatever that reason for the limit is. And the last step, we say what we want them to do. We remind them of what they can do. So we've set the limit, but we want to let them know what they can do. So at supper time, let's give each other 15 minutes screen-free time to connect with each other. And then why don't you take 10 minutes, go catch up with your friends and come back. When we set limits, support them to follow the limits and respond in healthy ways when they've pushed the limits, which are developmentally expected, we can really help them bring them back into safer or healthy risk-taking behaviors. Another thing we can do as supportive adults is to try and encourage that healthy risk-taking while avoiding significant harms. To do that, we need to recognize that there's some things we might not want them to do that they just might do. Remember, teens perceive risk differently than adults do, but we can help them learn about how to make healthy decisions. And the first thing we need to do to make this happen is to be honest. There are risks and benefits to almost everything. That doesn't mean the benefits are worth it. It doesn't mean the benefits are going to happen, but it also doesn't mean the risks will always happen either. And if we over magnify risk and don't acknowledge a possible benefit, we have a hard time bringing teens into this conversation of positive decision making. So what we can teach is to decide if something is right or wrong for a teen. They can make a pro-con chart. On the pro side, they list all the possible benefits. On the con side, they list all the possible risks or harm, and then they look at the list. I've worked with thousands of teens with this topic, and often when they just look at those risks, they look at the benefits, that chart is enough for them to decide what decision is right for them. And teens often make the choice that makes the most sense. Sometimes the risks outweigh the benefits, the teen doesn't do the thing. But teens also, when they've got that chart, the third thing they need, the benefits, the risks, that decision making, in order to make decisions that are great for them, they also need information about family values and cultural values. They need objective, accurate, up-to-date science information. And they need to see us engaging in decision-making process ourselves. That combination shows how people can take healthy risks to grow, and it can reinforce all of this other learning that they're doing. Sometimes a teen will decide the benefits outweigh the risks and decide to do the thing, even if it doesn't fit with family values, even if it doesn't fit what the adult wants. Teens perceive risk differently than adults. And so there are some things teens may do that we wish they wouldn't do. That combination does mean teens are more likely to have unintentional but predictable injuries from risk-taking or other harms. After all, they're bigger, stronger, fitter than they were when they were children, and they are in their risk-taking era. So, in order to help reduce possible harms of more dangerous risk-taking behavior, in addition to teaching them about how to decide to do something or not, we also need to teach them that if they decide to do a thing, there are always things they can do to make it safer and reduce that risk. Sometimes the safety strategy is risk substitution. Instead of doing an activity that has a fairly high risk of significant harm, we show them related activities where even if harm happens, it's less likely to be as serious. An example of this would be teens wanting to drive themselves to another city for a concert in the winter. A substitution would be to have a parent drive them to another city for a concert in the winter, or something similar. Sometimes, though, the safety strategy is using protective gear. For example, I work at in sexual health where we know there are risks and benefits to sexual activity. And for people who choose to have sex, they might choose to wear the protective gear of condoms or dental dams. Sometimes it's a combination of setting limits, accepting mistakes, and most importantly, setting up a safety net so that a teen knows there's something that will help them get out of a bind if they've had some serious consequences. And we're going to look at a few examples of how that can work in the next couple of slides. So in practice, how can we support healthy risk-taking in relation to digital media? Well, using social media, spending time online, typical daily activity for most teens. Helps them stay connected, helps them learn new information and new skills. It's valuable. They're already taking the risk to use it. They're aiming to get the benefit of connection and learning while knowing they'll be exposed to misinformation and other content that might not be right for them. We know that digital media can lead to harms like radicalization, sextortion, unhealthy relationships. So how do we navigate this? Well, as part of building your relationship with them, maybe spend some time on media with them side by side. Talk about what they're doing online. Choose apps together. Support them develop media literacy. This may be a place where setting limits about screen time, what apps are and aren't okay, what information is private and what can be shared, and setting rules about respectful online communication all come in here. You can set up safety strategies like substituting a higher risk app for a safer one, or blocking certain sites, setting timers. And we talked about setting up a safety net. In this case, the safety net is helping them recognize that when something goes wrong, even if something that went wrong is because they did something they knew they shouldn't have done, or if they've made a big mistake, if something goes wrong, you're still there to support them and help them get out of it. This is one of those places where we can save teen lives by letting teens know that if something's happening online, even if it's because of something they think they shouldn't have done, there is help available and we can be part of helping them get that help. Another area where we can help support safety strategies is in the area of teens, teen sexuality or teens having sex. Now, it is expected that teens will explore their sexuality. During puberty, they make a lot of sex hormones, a lot more than they'll ever make at any other time in their life. And these not only tell the body to start maturing sexually, they cause teens to have sexual thoughts and feelings. That doesn't mean all teens have or want to have sex. It's also a time where they have changes in their emotional and social self. They might start thinking about forming dating or sexual relationships. And yet, when it comes to sexual behaviors, today teens are less likely to have sex than in any previous generation that we have research about, but some still do. So this is also one of those areas where adults, we have to recognize that we often have very strong personal values about what is the right thing to do when it comes to sex in general and when it comes to teen sexual activities. We often want our teens to follow our values, and sometimes we even want them to scare them out of having sex. We know that's not an effective motivator. We're going to aim to not use fear-based tactics. So what is effective? Well, just like we've said before, talking about relationships, safer sex, sexual decision-making, talking about family beliefs and values, especially the rationales for those beliefs and values, are part of supporting teens make healthy sexual decisions. Of a similar importance, supporting school-based sexuality education really matters. Teens who get comprehensive sexuality education in schools delay first sex, and for those who do choose to have sex, they're much more likely to have safer sex in the context of affirming healthy relationships and for those decisions to fit with their personal value system. And as with all risk-taking topics, supporting the teens come up with a plan for how to manage if things go wrong is an important part of keeping teens safer from what could be a riskier situation. Substance use is another area that's changed quite a bit in the world of teens and risk-taking in the last few years. For quite a while now, teen substance use rates have been dropping significantly. And although it seems to be stabilizing now, it looks quite different than it may have in previous generations. For example, some reports still show alcohol as the most commonly used substance by teens, but we also know that vaping, including vaping cannabis, using nicotine pouches, using high-dose caffeine through various products, and use of prescription medications are also being used by teens in increasing numbers. Now, we know the risks associated with substance use for teens and adults: poor judgment, organ damage, other health risks, overdose, serious stuff. But remember, scare tactics don't work. But talking with them about how substances work, why people use substances, what misuse looks like, can all help them make healthy decisions. This is also one of those places where teens need adults to set a clear limit. Follow the law. No substance use, alcohol, nicotine, cannabis until you're an adult. But as always, we want to support with a safety net. But we can also support with risk substitution. What else can they do to fit in at that party? What else can they drink? Dirty soda? What could they do that would feel fun and rewarding? What's the activity? But because we know some use substances, we're going to teach those harm reduction strategies. If you decide to drink, limit the amount you're drinking. Drink water while you're drinking alcohol. Make sure you eat meals and snacks. If they decide to use other substances, don't use alone. Have an naloxone kit and those sorts of things. Teaching these protective strategies are not a permission slip to break limits, and teens don't read it as such. They do not encourage substance use. What they do is help teens who do use substances stay safer. And what keeps them safest of all is knowing there's a safety net. If something goes wrong, they can't drive, or they feel sick, or they feel scared, or they don't know where they are, let them know you can pick them up. No questions asked. Later, you'll talk about how they can be safer. And driving, one last behavior often linked to teen and risk taking. Learning any new skills are risk, especially with driving. Driving carries significant risk to anyone who's on the road. But it is a life skill. Some teens can't wait to drive. But like with some of the other risk-taking behaviors we've looked at, many teens are avoiding this risk altogether now, sometimes to the detriment of their development and their independence. After all, valuable life skills. It's connected with freedom, independence, a sense of accomplishment. Getting good at an important skill like driving is so rewarding. It helps build self-esteem. So for supportive adults working with teens related to driving, consider accessing quality driver's education. This can help save relationship stress, but it can also make sure that what's being taught is current and accurate and in line with what we know safer driving is about. And when you're the driver, talk through your choices to reinforce what safer driving looks like. You can encourage additional independence and healthy risk taking by setting expectations like they're going to work to help pay for gas or insurance, or they need to support the family by running errands when they have the car. We can also set clear limits about driving. No speeding, driving curfews. Those boundaries for teen drivers can include things like letting the parent know where you're going, when you expect to be there, and letting the parent or guardian know when they've gotten their safety. And if that limit's broken, we follow through on natural consequence, like maybe not driving for a specific time. And if there's a ticket, they pay for it. After all, driving is a privilege and not a right. So to recap, I want to make sure we have time for questions. We're going to get a recap on the teen brain and risk taking with this short video. They had all sorts of strategies that as supportive adults we might use with our teens to help them navigate the world of teen risk taking, to help them have the positive outcomes that supports their development and their independence and the joy of becoming an adult while lowering the chance of significant negative harm happening. Now, I've wrapped up the formal part of this presentation. There's a question on the checkout here. It doesn't mean you need to answer it anywhere, but just at some point over the next little while where you're thinking about what you've learned today, what's one takeaway that you got out of today's session? Of course, you're welcome to share it if you'd like, but it's not required. We are going to stop recording and open it up for questions. We'll see if there's some in the question box.